Hello, I'm Jim Bradley, today's host of In Our Community. Very special topic today, Bloodless Medicine. We have a very special guest with us, Dr. Vinod Malhotra. He is the Director of Bloodless Medicine at Corona Regional Medical Center. He is also board certified on internal medicine and cardiology. A second guest we have is Cesar Arroyo. He is the Bloodless Medicine and Surgery Program Coordinator, again for Corona Regional Medical Center. Dr. Malhotra, we could start with you. Let's talk a little bit about where you went to medical school and what drove you in this direction.
Yeah, I went to medical school in India and graduated in 1965. Then I came to the United States and did my further training, residency in internal medicine and cardiology in Chicago. And then I moved out to California and started my private practice in internal medicine and cardiology.
Let's talk a little bit about your involvement in the field of bloodless medicine. What drove you in that direction?
I started practicing bloodless medicine in 1980. There was a surgeon in Orange County who started seeing a lot of patients who did not want to take blood. Most of them were Jehovah's Witnesses whose religion forbids the use of blood or blood products. And I was the internal medicine doctor to make sure that these patients were medically fit to have surgery. And that's how I got involved, and then from there on, it took off.
You've been practicing how long in the methods and techniques of bloodless medicine?
Since 1980.
Okay, so you have a few years into this.
Yeah.
Coming to Corona specifically, is this a thing you get recruited on, or you find them, or is it just something that's out there for you?
Well, I knew John Calderon from his previous job as administrator at one of the hospitals in Orange County. So when he moved out here, we felt that there was a need for bloodless medicine and surgery in this area since there was no other program. And so he contacted me, or I contacted him, and then we agreed that we should perhaps have a program at Corona Regional since this was the only hospital in Corona area. And there were close to about 60,000 potential patients, Jehovah's Witnesses, who live in the Inland Empire.
You said Jehovah's Witnesses, and we'll get into more about what bloodless medicine is, but is it strictly Jehovah's Witnesses that drive this at this time?
Well, I would say about 95% of patients who are involved in the bloodless medicine program are Jehovah's Witnesses.
And what are your responsibilities or your authorities in being the director? Where do you go with all this?
My job is to set up the program, choose the specialists that are going to be treating these patients who are cooperative in the sense that they want to practice medicine without the use of blood or blood products, and also set up the infrastructure at the hospital, which we'll go into more detail. Cesar can go into that, and that's my job, is to coordinate the program and make sure the patients receive the care that they need.
Very good. Cesar Arroyo, we mentioned your name before. You're coordinator of the Bloodless Medicine program here at Corona Regional Medical Center. What is your relationship with the good doctor here?
Well, basically, as doctor being the medical director for this program, myself being the coordinator for the program, we work well together as a team. We accomplish, of course, bloodless medicine, and we do that by educating not only the staff, but as well as the community. And we have a great team of doctors that really are fully cooperative with the needs of the patients. So as we work together, we certainly strive to make sure we meet the needs of the patients.
Okay. What kind of background do you have in this field of bloodless medicine?
I myself do not accept blood transfusions myself. That being said, I've for years have felt this way, and that's my stand. Now, I've of course done research for years. I've gone to meetings, I've attended various seminars, all with the objective of obtaining the knowledge to know how to work with these medicines as well as with the techniques that are utilized. In return, what I've received is a lot of experience in helping the community as well as the people that are interested in this field. I can explain the terminology both in English and in Spanish.
And how long have you been in this area, Corona and the hospital?
I've been in Corona for almost 30 years, and I've got to say I've got deep roots here with families as well as friends, and I'm very interested and dedicated to helping the community within this field.
It's interesting when you think about all this growth, not just in the community, but in looking at things like bloodless medicine, something we probably didn't talk about much in the past. I'm Jim Bradley. This is In Our Community. We'll be right back.
Lazy bones America, we're no longer just sedentary, we're stationary. And that's bad news for your bones, because bones need weight-bearing activity to grow strong and stay strong. So get up, get out, get moving. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons.
Never heard a word I say.
Welcome back. I'm Jim Bradley. This is In Our Community. We have a couple of very special guests today talking about bloodless medicine. We have Dr. Vinod Malhotra and also Cesar Arroyo, both of Corona Regional Medical Center. Let's talk about bloodless medicine, its origin and history. We mentioned it a little bit before, but it seems like it goes deeper because in our, before we started taping the show, we talked a little bit that's becoming more acceptable, maybe even more desired by not just by the patient, but to some degree by the insurance people. So can you tell me more about bloodless medicine and where we're going with this?
Bloodless medicine, originally, as I said, came out because of the needs of Jehovah's Witnesses. But as you remember, in 1980s, we were hit with hepatitis epidemics and also HIV, which made the safety of blood a big problem. And then everybody got interested into it, but it's probably not a good idea to use blood frivolously. And even now we still hear patients getting hepatitis from West Nile virus and things like that. So that there are so many diseases that are hidden in the blood that we don't know. Like we didn't know that HIV could be transmitted by blood transfusions till mid-80s. So
in fact, isn't that the main way it gets transmitted?
Correct.
A lot of people have died from that.
Yes. So actually one of our state senators in California, Senator Gans, died from blood hepatitis or HIV from blood transfusion for open heart surgery. So that's when it really became very important, and then the whole medical community started looking into ways first to make this blood very safe, which is impossible to do because if you're using somebody else's blood, you can't make it 100% safe. And also look at alternatives, and that's when I think bloodless medicine really took off, and more physicians also became aware that perhaps this is a good way to go. So basically we avoid using blood and blood products whenever it's necessary. In many times you have to, traditionally you were giving blood transfusion to patients, we find that a lot of them were unnecessary. That you don't have to transfuse everybody who bleeds a little bit. Your blood count, which is called hemoglobin, has to go down considerably lower than what we used to feel before that you needed to be transfused. So now we wait till somebody's blood count drops down to like 7 before we give blood transfusion. Before, the standard of care was that you transfused everybody whose hemoglobin levels dropped below 10. But now we found, having worked in this field, that it's not really necessary to transfuse everybody who drops below 10.
We were talking about education of bloodless medicine, and of course this is part of it right here. When you see a patient, is it kind of like educate everybody that walks through the door, except for maybe those that are Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, because they kind of practice bloodless medicine, I think have for a long time. But for the reasons you mentioned, there's alternatives, and I'm even assuming it may even be safer alternatives. So do you have to educate everybody as they walk through that door?
Yes. We actually will be surprised how many people are actually aware of it. And a lot of our patients, some of my patients that I have who are not Jehovah's Witnesses, and I ask them if their blood count is low, would they like blood transfusion, or I could treat them with alternative means like intravenous iron and all that. And invariably they say, no, don't give me blood.
Really?
Because they've heard or read stories about how you can get sick from taking somebody else's blood. So if it is safety, if they're explained that it is safe, that you'll be okay if you didn't take blood, they all opt for no blood option.
Now, I also, when you read the papers or watch the television, listen to the radio, you get the impression that there's not enough blood at the blood banks.
Correct.
I would think, does this not take some of the pressure off of having to have all that much blood?
Oh yes. Statistics show that we use 11 million units of blood in this country every year. That's a lot of blood. And it comes to average of 4 units per person. Every patient who comes to the hospital, Now, interestingly, 60% of the blood that is used for elective surgery, which means a surgery that is already planned and you know what the patient has.
Non-emergency.
Yeah, correct. So, and a lot of it is just used because we still follow the old standards of 10 gram hemoglobin or less, you give everybody blood. So if that 60%, which is almost what, about 8 million units of blood, if we could even cut that down by 10%, we would have no blood shortages. So I think a lot of the blood that is used is just used because we're not practicing bloodless medicine. And it's, I want to emphasize that bloodless medicine is as safe as giving blood, or actually safer. So you're not going to die because you didn't get blood when your hemoglobin dropped down to 9.
Like that old MASH series when they run out with it, giving, yes.
You know, and
what about the promotion and the education, Stephen?
Well, yeah, that's interesting because as he was mentioning, obviously there's a big need for educating on this. We've been requested to give seminars of all places to some the Red Cross, where they actually are receiving calls of patients that want to know how to avoid blood transfusions. So as we go and speak with them, we pretty much give them the seminar and they understand what these alternatives are. And they're very appreciative because they realize there's a shortage, and as the shortage gets worse and worse, they really are very, in this case we can say, appreciative towards these programs because they realize there's a need for it.
Now I assume, and that's an assumption by a naive person maybe even, that most of this is covered by insurance, just like it would be if you had to use blood. Maybe even better.
Correct. Because the medicines we use are easily available in every hospital.
Am I right in assuming that the insurance people think you're really great because it's not as risky?
Correct. And also they really don't interfere that much in how you treat a patient as long as it's within the standards of care. So, and of course, blood has become very expensive. About 10 years ago, you could purchase a unit of blood for about $200. Now it's almost up to $800 to $900 per unit of blood because of all the extra testing we have to do for all diseases that are, they keep discovering every day something else is being transmitted. So blood has become expensive now. It's not, and then of course, harder availability is always a problem, shortages.
We've kind of got a feeling, but I want to ask you a question about technique because I'm not sure. What would you say is a technique of using bloodless medicine on, say, a person that's going to have a surgery, stomach surgery or something like that?
Let me give you, we'll take two examples. One would be elective surgery, where your surgery is planned in ahead 2-3 weeks, and then we'll also use an example of emergency surgery. If you were in a car accident, you landed up in the trauma center. So let's go with the elective first.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example of hip replacement, which is a very common procedure in elderly people with osteoarthritis. So normally, if you're not practicing bloodless medicine, having talked to a lot of orthopedic surgeons, they will type and cross you for 4 units of blood in case you need it. But the way we do it, the way I feel it, that if you're going to have surgery in 4 weeks from now, we have plenty of time to prepare you so your blood count is as high as it can be, which would, in a man, around 15 and a woman around 13. If your blood count is up to 15, then even if you lose 1 or 2 units of blood, you're only going to drop down to 10 or 11, which means you don't need the surgery. We also use techniques during surgery to salvage your own blood. There is a machine called Cell Saver, which salvages the blood that is lost during surgery, recycles it through a machine, and gives it back to you. So you're getting your own blood, which is clean and purified, so you're not using anybody else's blood, and your blood count should not drop at all.
Like a recycle.
Correct. So that's a machine. It's called Cell Saver, and it's available at every hospital. So but a lot of surgeons don't want to take the effort of using that machine. And I've talked to several. They say, "Well, I was trained, just give blood." I said, "But why? When you can use a machine that'll save the patient's own blood and give it back to him, why would you want to use blood from the blood bank?"
Even doctors need education,
yes,
right?
Doctors need more education than patients, because patients want it, but the doctors sometimes are not cooperating.
I like that. It sounds kind of good to me. I don't know about you folks. If you don't mind, we're going to take a little break. We're going to continue this conversation. In our community, I'm Jim Bradley. We'll be right back.
I'm an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I live the Army values.
I will never
Accept defeat.
I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough.
I am a professional.
I am a professional.
I am the guardian of freedom.
And the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
Defend freedom. In the Army National Guard, you can. Visit 1-800-GO-GUARD.com today.
Welcome back once again to In Our Community. I'm Jim Bradley, a couple of very special guests from Corona Regional Medical Center. We have Dr. Benoit Malhotra. We always tumble on that name, but he's a great guy, it's a great interview. And also Cesar Arroyo, who is the coordinator of Bloodless Medicine and Surgery Program here at the hospital, Corona Regional Medical Center. Doctor, let's finish off on a conversation we're having on bloodless medicine. The emergency, somebody comes in an emergency, how do you determine then that it'll be bloodless or not?
Now, there we are faced with a problem. If a person is a Jehovah's Witness, they're not going to take blood anyway. I'm talking, let's say if you're not a Jehovah's Witness and you have no objection to taking blood, then the decision has to be made whether to transfuse you or use other alternative intravenous fluids and all that. I just wanted to bring up a couple of studies that have been done nationwide in different trauma centers. They have found that critically ill patients who are who have bleeding or have lost a lot of blood, when they used blood transfusions to resuscitate them instead of alternative intravenous fluids, they did poorly. And the reason for that, they have found out that most of the blood that is being given to patients is old blood. Now, if you donate blood today, it probably won't be transfused for another 2-3 weeks. And the shelf life of blood is only 4 weeks. So a lot of the patients are getting old blood, like drinking spoiled milk. So a lot of the red cells that are in the blood have already died. So you're basically getting quote unquote dirty blood. And for the outcome of these patients who are very critically ill were not as good as expected with blood transfusions, because blood bank cannot guarantee that they'll give you the freshest blood that was just drawn today. So most of them sit there for 2-3 weeks. So by the time you get there, in 3 weeks, half the cells are already dead. So you're basically getting dead cells, which is going to cause further problems. So this is now, these are nationwide trials that are published. Yeah. This is a published data, which again, a lot of physicians don't know that when you're giving blood, you may be giving old blood, which is no good for the patient.
Wow, you caught my attention, by the way, on that one. That's, well, let's move on to another area. There are many hospitals that have bloodless medicine programs, yes or no? Arroyo, could you kind of help us there?
To answer your question in brief, no. It's not very common. Just if we go within our area as far as Riverside, Moreno Valley, as far out in Barstow, we are actually the only hospital that offers this type of service or program to the community.
How about the Inland Empire as a whole? Other hospitals that might be into it?
The Inland Empire as a whole, we pretty much have this hospital. There's other hospitals which involve bloodless medicine, but within this particular area, it would pretty much be to us.
Yeah, that brings back a memory of some years ago when I was talking to John Calderon of this hospital, and he was talking about bloodless medicine of all things. And I think he presented it in two ways. It's a big need, and it's also a big business. And I would assume if you have 60,000 patients a year, did I remember that right? That's quite a business, and it's also quite a relief for the people that are being involved in this.
Certainly. And the way the program is set up, we make it to where it's very respectful to the patient in terms of respecting their wishes to avoid blood transfusions. There's, of course, a lot that Corona Regional Medical Center does in terms of promoting the program, but at the same time, there's a lot of precautions that are taken into effect. As Dr. Malhotra was talking, there's preoperatively what can be done, during the surgeries what can be done, as well as postoperatively. But there's many things that we do to identify the patients when they come through. We make sure they have the no blood sign, which is placed right in the front of their chart. Most of these patients have a medical directive, which is an advanced healthcare directive, which goes in their chart as well. There's the green wristband, which identifies them as being part of the Bloodless program. Now, this is very important because, just as we mentioned post-operatively, once the patient's complete with the surgery, we need to conserve as much blood in their system as possible, being where they're not going to accept the blood transfusion. So, as an example, when the phlebotomist comes in the room, rather than withdrawing a large vial tube of blood after about a week or so and all these tests, they're bound to need a blood transfusion. We don't do that. We use what's called, in this case, we use pediatric tubes. Get the same results with a lot less blood involved. So these are the various precautions we have also on the face sheets where it states they're part of the Bloodless program. The staff, the entire staff, and it's a team effort which involves the staff, and in this case basically what we accomplish is guidelines as well as policies, procedures, everything geared towards avoiding blood transfusions.
You may have listed most, if not all of them, but are there other things that differ Corona Regional Medical Center from other hospitals, say, that don't carry this, the way you operate? I'm reading right there's an awful lot of real first-hand service to the patient, but are there other things?
There is. The main difference I feel that differs us from other hospitals is there's a coordinator, and as we have, there's a medical director. As a coordinator, the coordinator has to be fully involved in each and every case. I talk to the patients prior to their surgeries, after their surgeries. I follow up, I educate them, I consult with them, and I had the full backing of the staff from the hospital. So that's a lot to be said, which makes us different than your ordinary hospital.
We heard from the doctor, but as the coordinator of the program here, have you seen a dramatic increase or a steady increase or whatever of people wanting bloodless medicine?
I have. Actually, last year alone, we were able to increase the program by 15%. Of course, the reasons being is, as we've discussed already, one, for personal reasons. People don't want to take the risks involved with the blood. The other reason would be for religious reasons.
And also, I may just jump in. There are doctors in different hospitals, individuals who will practice bloodless medicine. But what makes Corona Regional unique is that we have a whole team in place, which includes nurses, doctors, people in the admitting department. So the whole hospital is geared towards providing that service. So therefore, when the patient comes here, he feels very safe that he's not going to be transfused, and because everybody is aware of it with all these things that he has mentioned, wristband, identification, all that. So everybody knows that this patient is not going to receive blood transfusion. So they prefer to come here rather than go to another place where maybe the doctor is cooperative, but nobody else knows about it.
Yeah, it's not a specialty of the hospital,
Correct.
For example. Yeah, that's a good point, because as lay people, we don't understand why some doctors go to one hospital and some goes to another hospital, but that's I guess a giant reason why you should have a doctor that's practicing at Corona Regional Medical Center. Specialties when it comes to bloodless medicine. Does Corona Regional Medical Center offer all specialties, or is there any limit to what you will do when it comes to bloodless medicine?
We can do pretty much everything except open heart surgery and all, which is not, we don't have at this hospital. But I would say 95% of surgeries, medicine can be done here. The only thing, as I mentioned, for that we have to transfer them out to a tertiary center, which is cooperative and respects their wishes.
Very good. Cesar, if you could, before we go to break, on your interpretation, what is it like when you meet a person and you explain to them bloodless medicine? Because, we'll do the programs, but you know and I know, and you know more than I, but when they come in that door, a lot of them don't understand it. How do you approach that?
I consult with them, and what I do, I actually consider, we have a pamphlet that explains everything in detail as to educating them. We also offer seminars on a monthly basis, which pretty much we have a guest speaker. One of these doctors that are part of the Bloodless program comes and speaks on it. We educate them as to how to complete the Advanced Healthcare Directive, and I'm on call 24/7 for their support.
We're going to take another break, and we'll come up with any comments on our topic of bloodless medicine in our community. I'm Jim Bradley. We'll be right back.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives. helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Jim Bradley again in our community, our final segment of this interview today, very interesting interview, talking about bloodless medicine at Toronto Regional Medical Center, talking to the good Dr. Malhotra and also to Cesar Arroyo, who's the coordinator of the program here at the hospital. One we missed out on, or I missed out on, synthetic blood. Why do they come up with the types and what the alternatives? Because this is kind of confusing. What is a synthetic blood?
Okay. Synthetic blood is actually, there are about 4 or 5 different kinds of blood that are being developed in research, but the one that is most promising and is going to be hopefully on the market within a year or so is called polyheme. It's basically what they do is they take old discarded blood that is donated but never used. Mm-hmm. Then they break up the red cells and take out the red part of the blood, which is called hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is the one that carries the oxygen. So the reason we give blood is to carry oxygen to the tissues. So if you can just use hemoglobin instead of the red cell, and the reason for that is when you use just the hemoglobin, that's just a chemical like saline. So they don't require to be typed and crossed, and anybody can take that. It's like
But let me ask you this, because I don't understand it. But if you lose blood, do you have to replace it with blood?
No, you can replace it with other synthetic fluids. As long as you replace the volume, if you lost 1 liter of blood, you can replace with 1 liter of saline. But that saline doesn't provide you oxygen. So if you want to replace blood with the, what is the next best possible solution would be to give hemoglobin. And that is undergoing trial throughout the United States in different trauma centers. Actually, the paramedics are carrying this in their ambulance. So if somebody is in Barstow and had a accident and is bleeding, instead of giving saline, you could give this hemoglobin polyheme, which would provide immediate oxygen.
So they just have an injection and not have to mess with all that
stuff?
Yeah,
and actually it's kept on the shelf. It can last for 1 year. So it's a very promising tool to replace blood, and it'll also carry oxygen. So it'll be better than just using saline or Ringer's lactate or any of the regular solutions.
Tremendous change. This has opened up, even though it's been around for years, it is starting to open up a whole lot of avenues in medicine.
Correct.
Wonderful. Hey, let's talk just a little bit, because I think we're getting close to out of time here. Our viewers, how do our viewers want to learn more about bloodless medicine, or where do you give programs, or I know you've got materials. What does a viewer of this program do if they want to get involved?
Well, they can certainly call the hospital and ask to speak with the coordinator, myself. They can call my office, which is the 951 area code 737-7474, or even page me. I'm on call for support 24/7. The area code's the same, 951-963-7135. But if they call the office, we can certainly put them on a mailing list, which we have a mailing list, which the last one, we've actually introduced all the doctors that are part of this bloodless medicine team. And it has a calendar of events, which is a good resource to them, which will educate them as to the bloodless medicine field.
Well, I appreciate you people sitting down and talking with us today. I actually look forward to another segment on this, because every time that you talk about bloodless medicine, it opens up a lot of doors, and these are very positive doors, even though 1 or 2 of them scared me a little bit. I'm Jim Bradley. Thank you so much. This is In Our Community for Toronto Regional Medical Center and all the folks here. Thanks again.